It was a cold day in the small town of Cove. Clouds overhead. The fisherman, Lamar, shouted at me. "Be careful of the storm," he said. I probably should have listened, considering what I know now. I talked to the town crier, asking for any news. None. It seems this place, Cove, is a very quiet place, nestled up here in the mountains, next to what I believe the locals called Lock Lake. Afterwards, I went into the woods, collecting firewood, or just lumber in general, for the small town of Cove, earning what little I could. In economics, they say supply and demand are what make up the cost. And lumber is quite cheap in a wooden fort town surrounded by a dense forest. Still, turning some of the lumber into kindling. I've gotten quite good at making fires. Good for warmth in this place. And again, I tried my hand at fishing. I've yet to really catch anything. But it didn't stop my stomach from growling, so I set to try. After a little while, as the snow fell, I pulled up my first fresh catch. And then another. And then another. Before I knew it, I had a backpack full of fish waiting to be filleted and cooked. Wandering a little further into the forest, I didn't see the harm. I saw in the distance a light flickering, and went to investigate. I happened upon a camp, some strange signs with crossed spears. I didn't quite recognize it. Was it a warning? A ward against spirits? I don't know. But there was the fire. And so I resolved to cook what I could of the fish. No master chef by any means, and I burnt most of the fillets. Though just as many, I also managed to cook to deliciousness. Preserved in the smoke of the fire, they would last for some time as trail rations. They smelled so delicious. I couldn't help myself. I ate a few immediately, nibbling here and there. I grew somewhat concerned, however. I didn't see anyone in the camp. A couple of fresh kills, blood still on top of the snow, so they had to have been here recently. I assumed butchering their hunt. But still, no one. Not a soul to be seen. I left some of the food I cooked behind. Perhaps they would wonder. Hopefully they would not think it poison. But I felt some small kind gesture for the use of their camp. Continuing into the forest, I found a small circle of stones. It didn't seem natural and looked rather purposeful, but I didn't know the reasoning for it. Still, a curiosity in my hike. The snow kept coming down, harder and harder as the moment came by, but I paid no attention to it. It's just snow, I thought to myself. I walked deeper into the forest, finding another watering hole to test my skills. I set about making a fire, and again began to fish. As I cast, I noticed the clouds getting denser, thicker, blocking more and more light. So caught up in my day, I didn't really notice. I fished until my campfire died and the chill wind began to breeze through. I shivered. How cold it had gotten. I decided to try and head back. However, between the white land, white snow, and the white skies, I got turned around. My sense of direction muddled, as chaotic as the snow that fell. I wandered rather aimlessly, with the dread more cold than the wind creeping up my spine. I could barely see. The storm would not relent. I found a curious thing while lost. The ruins of a building with a circle in the middle. Something about it. Like a voice, or the memory of a voice faded in time in the back of my head. Still, I pressed on, knowing I could not stay. It had gotten so cold, and night was falling. While I couldn't see the sun, its illumination breaking through the clouds overhead moved toward the horizon. All I could do was to take refuge in a ruined building behind a pillar blocking the majority of the wind. I set down my bedroll, lit a fire. Laying down in the bedroll, I hoped my cloak and this leather wrapping would keep me alive in tandem with the fire. Sleep did not come easily, but still, I had to try. It was better than wandering around at night, lost in this cold. That night I dreamed. Again I saw the circle, the five-pointed star in the middle. It faded to something I just couldn't remember, but seemed familiar all at the same time. A man wearing all gray, a pattering of different equipments, standing in the center, waving his arms in an arcane way, summoning what seemed to be the elementals of the five-pointed star, the fifth not to be seen. I woke the next day. The storm had abated, and I found myself still very much alive. Still lost all the same. I grabbed my bedroll, thanked the shelter for what protection it provided. Then walked off in my best guess of a direction. I walked until I saw a gated area. A graveyard, maybe, with headstones. But suddenly, one of them threw a fireball. Undead. one of the first times I've seen it since Britain. Skeletons I'm aware of. But the other things, torsos floating above the ground, that was new. After running and hiding, I continued my march and found a cabin in the middle of the woods. The cold had started to creep into my joints. I knocked on the door, hoping the one inside would allow me to come in and warm myself by whatever fire was causing the smoke to come out of the chimney. Thankfully, they did. I shut the door behind me. I smiled, thanked them profusely, then took off my bear hat and my cloak and laid them next to the oven. It was good to feel the warmth of a fire, and not just a measly, meager campfire. And then the strangest thing happened. A man appeared, horseback, carrying a bow. He casually called out, "Hey." I had no idea what to make of the man. All I could do was fall back on politeness. He asked a strange question. Was I trying to do a quest? His, referring to the ranger. I told him I merely came in to escape the cold. The ranger, meanwhile, seemed rather passive about all this, and I wondered in the back of my head if such things were common for him. The ranger turned, looked at the man as he said "carry on," and vanished just as quickly as he came into being. "How odd," I said. "Happens more than you think," the ranger replied. I thanked the ranger once more for allowing me to shelter in his home, even for a few moments, and for the directions he gave me to get back to Cove. Without these, I'm sure I would have been lost for some time still. We said our goodbyes. I waved, and I left his home, walking stick in hand, to return from whence I came. When I finally saw the large wooden fort, my heart leaped in joy, knowing that I would not freeze to death this day. Shutting the doors, walking these familiar, somewhat, dirt roads, I walked in towards the center, smiling as I did. Even more so when Lamar called out to me, "Oh my God, Trever survived." I chuckled. I waved to him. I told him he was right. It was foolish of me to go out of that snowstorm the way I had. And lucky I was not to have met my end out there, frozen to death somewhere in the forest. I returned to the home that had graciously allowed me to stay. Sat down once more at the dinner table, preparing my fish fillets, and continued to write into my journal.